I remember the name. Jazz Takhar, best in the game. Mamba mentality in his own lane, so better pay attention to what he be saying. Get the message, ain't no question. Giving advice for any investment. Welcome to the broadcast, the Jazz Takhar podcast.
Don't worry, Jazz. It's not going to be called the Dawood and Laura podcast.
Maybe it will be.
I think so.
Let's see.
Well, you guys know we're live, and the team's been recording all this stuff,
Welcome
and this is
to the Dawood and Laura podcast.
there. You go. Well, you're not listening to the Dawood and Laura podcast. You're actually watching and listening to the Jazz Takhar podcast. But I have two crazies that I had to bring on today. Number one was a returning guest that I'm going to talk about, obviously, why I decided to bring him back. But the other thing is,
what do you mean, why?
Well,
Why
I got to tell them why I brought you as a returning guest. There's a reason for it. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention.
Drum roll, please.
Right. I'm sure you want all that attention. I know how you go. I know how you roll, Elto. Is Laura Stewert, first time on the Jazz Takhar podcast in the new studio on the app. And
It's about fucking time,
Okay, well,
Jazz. I've been waiting for my invitation.
Okay, well, you haven't been working hard enough. You haven't been up to a lot of things, so I figured you didn't deserve it yet. All joking aside, girl, you were there since episode 1. You weren't on that episode, but you were definitely behind the scenes, and at that time, you picked up a $75 mic for me at Staples. You plugged it into a computer. You had no idea what the heck you were doing and getting a podcast uploaded. We're 3.5 years down this journey now. And like, look at what we have.
What episode number?
This is episode number 200. I already
like
said
there should be streamers
yeah,
and
look,
like champagne popping.
maybe they can do that. Well,
like,
the champagne popping will
really
definitely do it. So it's very fitting that you're on the 200th episode because you've been there since day one, as I mentioned. So thank you for all that. Welcome to the podcast. But we brought on someone, as I mentioned, as a returning guest, all the way from Florida, Orlando, Florida, to be specific. He flew in. We're all three of us and our team, the REC Canada team, are going to be heading over to Niagara. Actually, while you guys are listening to this, we just got back, obviously, from Niagara. 1,500 people are going to be at this event. It's all investors with one of, in my opinion, the best real estate coaching services in the country, if not on the continent, Keyspire. Big shout out to Scott McGilvery, Michael Saracini, guys that have been on this podcast plenty times, and they really are leading the way when it comes to educating real estate investors. And you're coming to this event, Dawood. First and foremost, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be here.
Why?
I haven't seen you guys in 4 years, 3 years. It's back. I'm back home.
He's back, baby.
It's a little cold, a little fresh. It's exciting to be here.
Well, it's not Orlando.
It's not Orlando, Florida,
Hey,
but it's okay right now.
I know.
hopefully-
What are you coming in with your tan?
I know.
Making us feel bad. Well, I guess Jazz still has
I got the built. Hey, I got the
Okay, so
built-in
it's really
tan
just
line.
me
It's
that now
you.
gets to feel
Yeah.
bad.
Well, hopefully Yas and Wei, the
Put a good
the guy.
filter on it.
Yeah. Hopefully they fix the lighting for you.
We'll go to a tanning booth after this. Don't worry. We'll
Perfect.
catch up.
Perfect.
We'll catch up.
So much I want to talk about today, specifically how us as Canadians, because majority of our viewers and listeners are Canadians who are always wanting to invest into the U.S. and specifically in Florida. And so I definitely want to talk about all of that. Laura, you've obviously been to Florida a handful of times, if not way more than that.
I've lived in Florida. Well, lived in Florida, but I've definitely been there for a couple months while I was a nanny taking care of
You were?
a
I
young
didn't know
girl.
that.
Yeah, and I got to live in Sarasota
Oh,
for like
how
3-4
beautiful.
months right on the ocean. I mean, it was kind of the best job ever. Jazz keeps me locked up in some dungeon office, and I should go back to that job. But I love Florida. My parents used to go there often. I would visit them. They were in Daytona. So it's that typical.
There's so many options, right?
Yeah.
There's so many different places that you can visit in a very short driving distance. And I think that's the beauty of it. If you wanted to change the environment that you're in about an hour's drive, hour and a half, you can be in several cities and you can get the best of everything Florida has to offer. Like you were speaking about Sarasota. I love going to the beach over there. I think it's really relaxing. You want something a little bit more upbeat, more exciting, you can always go over to the other side of the coast as well,
Hit
too.
up Miami.
Miami, always a good night out.
Well, one thing that I find very interesting about you, Dawood, and for the people that are kind of new to my community and you don't know Dawood, but Dawood's a real estate broker in Orlando. But what I find most interesting is that you got the dual citizenship going on, right? And so you see it from a Canadian's eyes. And then obviously living in Orlando 2 decades now, 20 years it's been, right? We were talking, like we had a drink yesterday over lunch, and I always thought it wasn't that long. But then when you mentioned 20 years, I mean, you got
And I'm still waiting for you to come, by the way.
I know.
And you've probably been there longer than you were here, right?
Yeah. Without a doubt, actually. I was only here for about 7 years.
Took
but
you
my
there?
family...
What took you there?
I had
Born and raised, I should say, born and raised in Windsor.
Nope, born and raised in Kuwait.
Okay.
And then moved around the world to, 5 or 6 different countries after the Gulf War, and ended up in Canada. Got here, went to university here, it was fantastic. And then I went to go visit my mom's twin sister in January, where we went to the beach, and there were palm trees everywhere, and the sun was shining. And then I came back to Canada, and it was minus 30 or 20 or whatever it was. And in that moment, I said, I am never moving back to Canada ever again. And I'm going to figure out a way to move to the States.
But here's the thing. A lot of Canadians go through that moment. Like right now, we're entering fall, summer's in the past, like get my winter stuff out. And I know myself, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't live like this. I let's move to Florida. Like you start saying that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's the typical response. But you actually took action. I feel like most of us don't really like bite the bullet.
But you know what? It's okay. Everybody's circumstances are different. However, being a Canadian, working with Canadians over the last, let's call it 15 years or so, my book of business and the people that I work with, my clients who are now my friends and really an extension of my family. And I don't say that lightly because I genuinely care about the relationship that we've created over time, which has expanded to really not having to rely on a lot of local business, surprisingly, because my practice is all international based. So I end up working with people like you. We've been working together for about a decade, and we've known each other. You're essentially my family here. I can't not come here and not see you. It wouldn't be right.
Well, we didn't even have this planned.
No,
like this podcast was not planned, Laura.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah, the guy shows up yesterday out of the blue around the corner. We're like, whoa! And I thought I was in some kind of like weird virtual reality.
It was an emotional
moment.
moment.
Seen you.
Yeah.
was probably like
through a Zoom call.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we did, I think 26 of our clients, including myself and my family, we purchased something in Orlando.
Absolutely.
And that, we're going to be talking about what opportunities are available and all that kind of stuff. But that's the last time that to Laura's point, that we actually saw each other. And yesterday you were like, let me just come see the studio. And then while we're here, we're like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like, we might as well do an in-person recording, so much so that I called Yas and I said, Yas, do me a favor, let's move this podcast episode up because I think it's so timely. Like, to Laura's point, there's millions of Canadians saying the same thing. I'm not going to be going through another winter. I am going to move to somewhere that's warmer, and sometimes it's Florida and sometimes it's California and all that, Arizona, Vegas. And so I think, us talking about why and more importantly, how a Canadian can actually invest. Because some of the biggest questions we get is in and around taxation and what, like, should I set it up as an LLC, an S Corp, all like the words might be a little different, but they all kind of mean the same in real estate terms, even if it's an American term or a Canadian term, which we're going to definitely go into. But before we do, I did, and it's going to happen a lot in this podcast. Laura's going to cut one of us off. That's what she does.
Really, me? That's who you're going to blame for the cutoff.
In terms of, so that year that you came back, that time that you came back, did you do it as quickly as like right away that year? Like, you were like, okay, I'm leaving Canada, I'm going to move to Florida, or did it take some time?
No. It took some time. Obviously, I had to finish up school and everything, and the right opportunities lined themselves up where I ended up going to be over there and working and so on and so forth. But I didn't really get into real estate till actually when the market crashed. And I've never told this story before, but I think it's appropriate to tell it now. I always wanted to be able to share this story on a platform because I think it's the most ridiculous story to share based on the level of professionalism we all now
I'm on the edge of the couch now with this story.
So am I.
Like,
So I ended up seeing a friend that was heavily invested in land development, finished lots, and they were selling them to national home builders. And, you know, the 2008 Great Recession came and everybody was out of work. Times were really, really, really tough. Very similar to the echoing that we're experiencing of this uncertainty that we're all entering right now. Inflation is high. Recession is definitely either here or 100% here or maybe here. I'm not sure.
Depends on who you ask.
Yeah, it depends. Exactly. So, and you know, of course, I cover this on the radio show that I do in Orlando every single week. So it's an interesting topic to kind of understand the parallels. And they asked me, they said, we have this land. You know anybody that wants to buy it? Any of your Canadian buddies? And I said, okay, I don't know. I mean, I have nothing better to do. I've pretty much watched every single rerun of House at this point in time. And I opened,
Well, you took us back.
Great
House.
show, by the way.
I thought you were going to say House of Cards.
I'm gonna take you back even further. I open the Razr flip phone, the silver one,
Oh, yeah.
and I decide calling everybody that was Canadian in the phone, and the conversation kind of went like this: "Hi, how are you? Are you interested in any land? No. Are you interested in any land? No. Hi, Bob. Are you interested in land? No. One guy named Peter said, yeah. Where is it? Listen up. These were my answers. I don't know. How big is the land? I don't know. Is it on the water? I don't know.
You're giving us real estate agents a bad rap right now.
No. This is actually a success story when you see it in hindsight. What I did say was, give me a minute. I'm going to call you right back. I three-wayed the person that that had all the properties, and I let them kind of do the talking. And what I came to realize is, thank God I paid for that extra service for three-way calling, because you guys don't know that those were add-ons to the phone plan back in the day.
Yeah.
Anyways, long story short.
The 20-year-olds are like, what the
what
heck
did
are
you
you
have to
talking? What the
dial
heck is
in
a
to get the
Razr
three-way?
flip phone?
Yeah, I know.
That was pre-BlackBerry
Yeah.
days.
I don't even think you could take photographs on that thing at that point.
No,
Okay.
not at all. Yeah.
Anyways, so they connected, and lo and behold, a lot of business transpired out of that. And somehow I got invited to come back in to become a real estate agent.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that really talks to the already fire aim, what we
Yep.
speak about, right? Like, you had no idea what the heck you were doing, but you just picked up the phone, made some phone calls. When somebody said, yeah, sure, I want some information, you put people in touch, and you did your thing. And so for anybody who's like, oh, I need to be an expert at something.
Or I need to have all the information for that matter.
Or exactly, right? I think what you did is exactly what we do all the time, Laura, for our clients. We've been like practicing real estate now for coming up to 18 years. Laura, it's been how long for you?
8 years for me, yeah.
I mean, like, you're coming up to a decade. Like you're becoming an expert.
Yeah.
And when we get asked questions and we don't have the answers, we don't friggin' lie. We just say, hey, like, let me go find out those answers. And so now what happens from there?
So what happens is we end up coming to Canada, and I ended up meeting and reconnecting with all the real estate agent friends that I have, or people that knew people, and we started to set up seminars in which people would actually physically come into a seminar, sit down, and we would present an opportunity. And the ironic thing about it was, 20 years later, I learned the most important thing. The currency in the world that we live in today is not money. It's relationships.
Yeah.
And due to these relationships, the few friends that I had are the people I can thank today. There are people I actually had dinner with yesterday that I actually had the same conversation with them. And I said, if it wasn't because of you, I would not have the life that I have today. And I would have never met you, for example, and so on and so forth. And as a result of that, we created this beautiful business that catered to Canadians looking to invest in Florida. But times have changed. When a Canadian was able to invest in Florida in 2008, they were essentially walking around with $50,000 to $150,000 in either cash in their bank account or equity in a property. And all they could buy at the time was a cash property, which was a long-term rental for, call it, I don't know, $75,000 to $150,000.
This is what, 09 now, probably right after the crash, like
09.
2010?
Yeah, and the
Okay.
Canadian dollar was still $1.35 as to a $1 US. So it wasn't even at par yet.
Yeah.
It wasn't until about 2011 where the Canadian dollar strengthened to the point where it was at par and or even stronger than the US dollar.
Those were a good couple months for us
That
Canadians.
was great.
Yeah.
And one of our mutual friends, who I actually met from you,
Yeah.
was actually able to go out and purchase a property.
Big shout out to
essentially-
Dominic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For free. And how is that possible? Of course. He took out a line of credit from a property that he had here at, I think it was like, whatever, 1 point something percent or 2%, something completely
Minuscule.
minuscule, and bought a cash flowing property, making 8-10% at the time, and essentially didn't cost him anything. He was making pure cash flow. He sold the property. And then the one interesting thing that you can take advantage of, depending on the timing when it comes to investing in Florida, is that you're buying real estate on steroids. And what do I mean by that? You can take advantage of fluctuations in currency exchange to get an additional lift to the cash flow that you're getting, the appreciation that you're getting, and now the third X factor, which is currency exchange. So times have changed. There are more mechanisms, financial mechanisms available for Canadians to get financing. Now Canadians are after lifestyle properties, properties by the water. Short-term vacation rental properties are so hot right now because of portals like Airbnb and VRBO. And more importantly, even when you go on a booking site, bookings.com, hotels, Expedia, Orbitz, what do you see? You see a number of listings of hotels from 1-star to 5-star, and then a number of Airbnb products, because everybody's beginning to understand the value of that kind of an offering.
Okay, so I want to go high level for a second when in terms of geographically speaking. So let's just talk about why do people like Florida? So like I understand some of the stuff that you mentioned, but there's a lot of people in their late 20s, early 30s. They're hearing about that Florida is maybe a good place to invest, but they don't know actually why. And then we'll start to hone into some of the more common cities in Florida. I mean, we all know Miami, but that, like, why is that maybe a good place to invest into? And maybe, what are some things that you want to consider when you're looking at Miami? Obviously, Orlando is kind of like where your bread and butter is. But like when I've only been to Florida once.
You went to Hollywood, right?
I know I went to Fort Lauderdale.
Same area.
Same areas?
Yeah.
Okay. I really enjoyed that area. But I don't know, is that a good place to invest? That's not where I invested. I chose Orlando, but that had a lot to do with
So
you.
let's talk take a bird's eye view. Right?
Bird's eye view of Florida.
So when you look at where you are in Canada, you will realize that if you travel directly south, that's pretty much where in the country people prefer to go on vacation. So for example, if you're in BC or Alberta, most likely you would prefer to go to California because it's the closest place to a beach on the West Coast, and or Arizona or Las Vegas. If you're somewhere in the middle, a lot of people will travel down to Texas. And then, of course, if you're on the East Coast, Florida is the no-brainer. Why? The most coastal mileage than any other state in the country. You have several places that you can go and visit. Of course, if you have a family and if you have kids, you will be robbing your kids of the lifelong experience they'll be wanting, and you'll be a shitty parent for not taking your kids to see Disney and Mickey Mouse and Universal
Way to go,
Studios.
Mom and Dad. They did that for me when
Hold
I
on a
was
second.
5.
You've been, Laura?
Yeah.
I haven't.
Hold on. Have you taken your kids?
I haven't taken my kids, nor have I been.
Okay.
So,
Don't worry, I'll take you there.
but here's the
I'll
thing:
take you there.
their grandparents, my parents didn't take me, and so I'm not going to take my kids.
No, you gotta change this up.
Yeah.
I'm going to take you,
is
and
like
then you're going to be
generational.
forced to take your kids.
I would go today with no kids. I don't have any kids.
Let's go.
I would have the best time. I'd be in like the, Beauty and the Beast area, and I would just be loving my life.
You take me like are you a thrill seeker like that? Like, are you like a roller coaster person? No, but I know. But
I love roller coasters. I love Disney. I love princesses. I love it all.
Got it. Okay.
I know what to do with you.
Okay.
I'll take you to Epcot. They have different pavilions there, and we can go eating and drinking around the world.
Done.
How about that?
Love it. Done. You have sold.
Coming
And
down?
I like that too, so I'll come along for that ride.
So let's look at Orlando, for example. One of the busiest cities in the world. In 2019, 78 million people came to visit Orlando, Florida. I'm going to put things in perspective. That is double the population of Canada plus HST.
You always got to pay that.
Hey, just so the viewers and listeners know, this man is a host of a radio show. I didn't mention it at the start, so you can tell he's very comfortable with the mic. What is the radio show called, by the way?
It's called Real Sense Now. You can catch us on all of the platforms, Spotify, Apple, whatever.
All of it. And the crew will make sure we put your links and stuff in there.
This is a disaster putting the three of us together.
Well, we're all content creators.
Yeah.
This is going to be the Laura Dawood takeover.
It's the takeover.
Can we change the sign, please?
Yeah, let's just like black marker our
No.
names in.
It's crazy.
Well, look, hey, you know what? I did bring the Miami vibes to the
I
side.
like it. I actually want to get one of these things made for myself.
Big shout out to Steven Rochester. He put it all
The one
together.
thing I think that you didn't make mention of, obviously, just going south, but for us, it's what, 3 hours to get to Florida, and you're in the same time zone, so nothing's different.
So my parents live in Windsor, Ontario, and I often make the joke where I say it's easier to fly to and quicker to fly to Orlando sometimes than it is to get to Windsor on the 401.
So true.
And
we know that drive on the 401.
And I'd much rather end up in Florida than Windsor. No offense to Windsor.
Big shout out to mom and dad. We miss you.
Okay, so Florida, 78 million into Orlando, did you say?
Orlando,
That's crazy. And why?
Why? Because, we have Disney, Universal, SeaWorld, Legoland. There's always an expansion. There's always something new coming in. Harry Potter, Star Wars. The list goes on.
More
and on.
golf courses per capita than probably anywhere else.
More championship golf courses probably than anywhere else as well too. The second largest convention center in the country. So often what happens with a lot of big corporate conventions is they're either going to Vegas one year and then they will oscillate to Orlando the next year. So you have that kind of business. But it's also home to a lot of technology, aviation, aerospace, defense. So it's not just fun and games.
Oh yeah, there's always rocket launches and stuff that you can watch from.
So SpaceX
from the
is
beach.
there, and
now it is inland, so there's no what's the closest body of water? How can I get to a beach now?
So you can go to Daytona Beach, which is 15 minutes away from Orlando.
15?
50.
Oh, 50. Okay.
Or head over to the Tampa side, and you can be in Clearwater or St. Petersburg as well too, in about an hour and 15 hours.
Okay, so it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Listen,
It's no different than us trying to get to Collingwood or
Muskoka.
But here's the difference. I've always wanted to go there. And all the years that I've lived, no.
So I'm going to take you there.
Okay, take me
there.
And
there's places where you can go for, I can take them there to a drink. We can have it.
You know where to go.
I'll go with you. Okay. I'll go with you. So don't worry. I know who my friend on the show is now.
My hand's paralyzed here.
But
you guys know you can move the mics around. I don't know what's with the stiffness with you guys.
What was the other one we did? The little gizmo handshake.
This is what I was talking about in terms of the craziness.
Okay, back to me.
Go.
So, in a 3-hour drive, you can get from Orlando to Miami. And if you were to draw a nice big circle around Florida, you can pretty much reach a good majority of the 22 million people that live in the state of Florida. So that's almost just under half of the population of all of Canada in one state. Minus, of course, the Panhandle area, better known as the Redneck Riviera, of course.
Okay. Well, you went there.
I went there. It's okay. Beaches are beautiful.
He said it.
Not much to see, but it's okay. Yeah. It's all for the content, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to offend anybody here.
Go on.
Shout out to my rednecks in Florida. Okay, we're gonna stop. You can edit that part.
Well, you know what it is. That's a thing for people in Canada, right? It's I want to move to Florida, but there is that kind of. We're very proud Canadians. A lot of us are, at least. And I think there is a bit of that in what stops people from actually biting the bullet.
I think it's just lack of information. And I think, when Jazz, has set up, and you have set up these amazing platforms for us to communicate with all of your investors, I think there's a lot of misconceptions that we often maneuver through whenever we have our conversations. For some strange reason, some Canadians believe that they can't invest in the US for whatever reason. Some Canadians think that they're double taxed because of their citizenship, which is not true. The tax collector in Florida does not care about which country you come from, but just simply cares whether you own this property, it's a primary residence, or it's an investment property. And if it is an investment property, if you're from Africa, from India, from America, or even another state, you're going to be taxed exactly the same way as anybody else would be, as long as it's not your homestead property, also known as your primary residence.
Now, are most people that are renting out these properties, so the tenants, is it like today now in 2022, is it focused heavily on short-term rentals? Is there long-term tenants as well?
So,
and who are, if so, you said yes, who are these people?
So the beauty about looking at, for example, Orlando in particular, and I can give you several examples in different cities as well too, but let's just focus on Orlando just because truthfully, it's probably the best buy in terms of value, in terms of location, in terms of occupancy levels throughout the year or seasonality, because there's hardly any slow time. And we'll get into that in a second. 60% of the population in Orlando rents because Orlando is a very transient city. Rents have gone up by 30% as well too. Housing prices have gone up as well too. So those who cannot afford to buy something are forced to rent. People who want to come and visit the city and don't want to pay hotel prices. Because when you're traveling to, let's say, for example, Orlando, how many people in your family, Jess?
4.
Okay. And if you were to travel down, you more than likely go travel with your best friend,
Yes.
Simeon.
Yep.
How many people in his family?
4.
So that's 8 total.
Yeah.
It would be really expensive to go out and rent a number of hotel rooms a night.
Yep.
So it'd be cheaper for you to go out and find a beautiful 5-bedroom to, let's call it a 14-bedroom house with a swimming pool for you to rent. And the kids can play in the game room, and there's all kinds of amenities.
There's a lot more to do than a hotel room.
And at the same time, it offsets the cost of having to go to another theme park, paying for breakfast, lunch, dinner, et cetera, et cetera. So they become even more popular. So when you look at a city and you look at investment and you look at the different pockets that you can take advantage of, there's so much to offer. You can buy a long-term rental, and you are surely going to get a tenant that needs a place because there's a shortage of rentals.
Now, if you're going to go down the long-term route,
Yes,
like say a 1-year lease,
correct.
you're not going to rent a 14-bedroom. I mean, you're not going to purchase a 14-bedroom house.
but
You're going to go down the path of like, is it a 1-bedroom condo? Like
So it'd be like a 1
Toronto?
to 3 bedroom condo,
Okay.
and or it would be a, let's call it a 3-bedroom to 5-6 bedroom house.
Okay.
That's what you would typically expect to find on the long-term side. On the short-term side, the secret is you either want to purchase a smaller home, and a smaller home being a 4 or a 5-bedroom type of property,
Okay.
or, believe it or not, a 9, 10, 11, 12 bedroom house, the largest that they offer. Why?
Some serious places.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
are we talking, are these what's the square footage on something like that? Like, give me a 10-bedroom house. What's the square footage?
like 4,000 or 5,000 square feet.
Okay. So
And-
they're
and
not 10,000 square feet.
No, they're not.
necessarily-
But
Yeah.
they're designed really
Like
well.
the basements probably have bunch of bedrooms.
No basements in Florida because
right, of course, yeah.
you dig 6 feet under
yeah.
the ground and you're hitting
You're in
water.
water.
Yeah.
So there's a swimming pool underground
fair
for you
enough.
as well too. So they build up, and what will happen is you'll have a really nice open floor plan with the kitchen, living room area overlooking the pool. You go upstairs, and essentially there'll be a landing area where a lot of people will have a pool table, a number of games, or maybe some arcades or something like that for the kids. It'll be really fun, and then just a bunch of bedrooms. So it's not designed like your traditional home.
Right.
It's there to serve a purpose, and the purpose is bedrooms and fun for the family that's staying in there.
Is it like in one? Are a lot of these types of homes like only in one subdivision in Orlando, or is it kind of scattered out?
We all have heard about a lot of the legal issues when it comes to short-term vacation rentals, and the issues a lot of cities are imposing to kind of shy away from it. I know Toronto has some concerns about that. Miami Beach, you can't do, for example, short-term vacation rentals because it conflicts with hotel accommodations as well too. And in Orlando in particular, there's an area called the Four Corners. The reason why they call it the Four Corners is every single corner touches in a different county. And within this four corner area is legal short-term vacation rental. So the area is zoned for short-term vacation rental.
Geographically, how many miles or kilometers are we talking? Whatever number you want to use.
I want to say probably like maybe like 6 square miles or something.
6 square miles. Okay.
5 square miles or something.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay. So it's not a huge.
It's a huge area in terms of like you're covering about, I would say, maybe 50,000 homes or something. Or
Okay.
40,000
Wow.
homes.
Okay. Sorry. So I take that back.
But
Okay.
it's resorts, it's hotel condos or hotel rooms, it's townhouses, it's single family houses. There's a lot of different.
And this is where you'll find your 10-bedroom homes and your 12-bedroom
or a
homes.
1-bedroom condo or a hotel room for that matter.
Okay,
So it
okay.
just depends on where it is. All of these areas are, generally speaking, about 9 to 15 minutes away from Disney.
Okay.
So that's the major driver there. We have a road called 192, which is essentially our version of a Clifton Hills or the Vegas Strip, if you
Got
want,
it.
with
Yep.
all the
Yep.
souvenir shops and
Yep.
the hotels and restaurants. Universal Studios and SeaWorld is 15, 20 minutes away. So it's really catering to that clientele. More so than that, you have the Wild World of Sports or the ESPN zone over there, where if you're competing in any national level, whether it's cheerleading or soccer or baseball, or even if there's a baseball team or an NFL team that's practicing, they're practicing over there.
Okay.
So you'll have a lot of these teams rent out these larger homes as well too and house everybody under one roof.
Now, is there for Canadians like property management companies that are like widely available? Is it all done through like the Airbnbs and the VRBOs and all that kind of stuff?
Great question. And I think the biggest distinction for a lot of Canadians that are interested in this product, they keep thinking about having to do it on their own as they would over here.
Yeah.
And one of the value added services that we do, which is essentially our model, is a turnkey, headache free solution by which every single aspect of your transaction from start to finish, whether it's the mortgage, whether it's the insurance, connecting you with a tax advisor, property management, maintenance,
What about, like, furniture? Yeah.
everything is accounted for. If you connect with me, as we've done for you and your clients, you just basically go through the conveyor belt. You figure out which property you want, and then we'll just take care of everything for you. You don't have to worry
Fully
about it.
turnkey. Turnkey.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about the management. Nobody's going to call you about a light bulb or a toilet flush or anything like that. You basically come and enjoy it whenever you want. You can stay for as little or as long as you want. It's your home.
So that's an interesting point. I feel like a lot of people, when they're considering buying a property in Florida, they're thinking about it a little bit from the eye of, oh my gosh, this is so great because now I will personally have a vacation property, but I'm not going to use it all the time and I'm going to rent it out. Is there a sweet spot in where you're cash flowing or that you would recommend where it's like, look, if you think you're going to use it over X amount of time for your own personal use, you probably, like, it's not going to do as well as, say, if you were 90% of the time putting it on Airbnb. Like,
Absolutely.
There's got to be a sweet spot, right?
So I always ask my questions this very simple question. What is your end investment? And I say end as an END. What's the goal? How are we planning to use it? Is it a retirement home? Are you planning to use it for more of a lifestyle play? Is it a family property? Or is it a pure investment? And based on that, we'll be able to back into it. Now, a lot of these properties typically rent for about, let's call it 75% occupancy per year, which is a really strong number to begin with. As of March 2021, the occupancy levels in the greater Orlando area, or in the Orlando area specifically for short-term rentals, went up from 86 to 99%. In other
What
words,
year was this, sorry?
2021.
2021.
Okay.
So, and it's still going on right now. Why? Our borders opened up. We didn't only start to have guests coming in from different states, we had our Canadian friends finally starting to come. Now that their borders opened up and had allowed them to cross over, people from Europe started to come. And there's this pent-up demand now more than ever. And of course, if you're going to go away on a holiday with your family, where are you going to go? Mm-hmm. it's a place where you can cater to everybody's interests, likes.
Well,
and
what I
wants.
love about Florida in that sense, man, is that it's, it's in the States. It's for like, you're not going to one, like, and I go to a lot of the Caribbean islands, and that's kind of where I do a lot of my vacationing, but it's different, right? Like, you don't have like that high speed internet. And, like, look, it was food, shelter,
Well, and if you're
running
not
water,
staying,
and you
like,
need
in
Wi-Fi now,
Yeah.
right?
If you're not staying on a resort, for example, like it probably doesn't offer you to the extent that a place like Florida does, just from safety alone, but also like quality of restaurants and like if you're looking for something a little bit nicer and upscale.
For sure.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Alto. Have you ever considered doing like a short-term rental, like for yourself? Like, what scares you, if anything?
Like
in
purchasing one?
Purchase and then renting it out as a short-term
Yeah,
rental.
I think for me it would be strictly the fear that I would have a lot of work to do. Like, you know how you said it's completely turnkey? Like, I would be nervous that like I'm going to get a phone call from someone in the middle of the night and they've just shown up to their rental and now I have to deal with it. Or I don't trust the people perhaps that I'm working with down there. Like if they're like a mom and pop cleaning company or whatever, right?
So would it be...
And I think that's very important too, right? Because that's what most people's fear is.
Yeah.
But yeah, you had already kind of touched on that like that's not necessarily the case. I think there's so much of this going on there. We think of it like, oh, I'm going up to Collingwood and I'm buying a place and there's really not management companies up there. It's, you get Joe down the street to kind of like give the keys to your
or
tenant, which
clean
is
the
what I
place,
did
yeah.
over the pandemic. Like I rented a place up there and someone came by and were like, here's the keys. It's less formal.
So the
but
property
you want something
management
like what
company
you're
that
saying.
we work with, for example, is the largest property management company in the United States. They manage over 32,000 homes.
So they know what they're doing.
So we work with the highest pedigree of vendors in order to make the experience as headache-free and smooth as possible. As you always like to say, we remove the friction. And by doing that, I'll give you a perfect example. I have clients that I work with that, and this is the beauty about our clients that we've worked with together. We get to a point in time where they've bought a property, they're interested in another one, they're not flying down anymore.
Right.
They're basically saying, Dawood, Jazz, send me something new. I'm ready. We find them the property. I literally go in, if it's a resale, and take a video on a FaceTime call or walk through a deal on a Zoom call, and everything just falls into place thereafter. For example, the property closed. We needed to go in, touch up some, final touch-ups on our last walkthrough. I coordinated with the property management company, a phenomenal relationship. The furniture pieces started to come in. By the next time I went to go visit the property, it was all set up, staged, ready to go. You could literally come in there with your toothbrush and your luggage and enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Well, I mean, and I know we're talking a lot more about short-term rentals than long-term, and my guys are usually used to me speaking more about short-term, long-term holds and rentals. But the one thing that excites everyone when it comes to investing into real estate is the cash flow, and you just get a lot more of it with short-term rentals. I know the stuff that myself and the other REC insiders invested into. I mean, we were looking at anywhere from $1,200 upwards to like $1,500, $1,700 a month in positive cash flow. Is that normal?
I think not all properties are like, and I think there's several drivers that drive some properties to perform better than others. And I'm going to share the secrets with you. You need to be close to the parks. You need to be in a gated community that has legal short term, which we are never going to send you down, a different path where that's not going to be the case. If you're after a home, you can go for a smaller home or a larger home. There are some homes that perform better than others. And of course, ask us and we'll definitely be able to walk you and guide you through the process.
But it's what you said earlier, right? Go like the 3 to 4 bedrooms.
No, I said 5 I
apologize.
I said 4 or 5 for a single family home, or 9 to let's say 14 for a larger one. Just
Okay.
depends on what the community offers.
Okay.
And then if you're looking at townhouses, a lot of the townhouses come with pools these days, so that it's larger than a splash pool or a plunge pool, but it's something you can enjoy with your family and cool off in the back. A lot of these communities now have $20 million clubhouses with simulated surfing experiences, bars in the pools. And
It's like its own resort.
exactly,
These little
it's actually better than a
places,
resort, right?
You probably don't even leave. I'm sure families come and they stay there for days at a time.
I think what happens with a lot of people is they'll end up visiting the theme parks on the first go around, and then on the second go around they'll go 1 or 2 days, and the rest of the time they're just hanging out doing.
Yeah, there's so
enjoying
much
the
to
nice
do
weather.
there. There's so much to do there.
I think we should speak about the weather. You were asking me what my fears are with Florida, and I think obviously what's going on right now, I mean, hopefully I can share this, is that you had just told us that things are flooding, my garage is flooding, and there's
Oh, not my garage, but like places on the coast.
right
yeah.
now because of the hurricane that's happening. What do you say to people about that if that's the kind of their fear?
Okay, so I have lived in Florida for 20 years, and I'm not going to downplay it. I'm going to call it for what it is. A lot of the areas that get hit on in a hurricane is usually on the coast. Hurricanes gain speed on water and slow down over land. What we saw, for example, with Hurricane Ian, is that it hit as a high Category 4 and calmed down into a 1 just when it came south of Orlando, and is turning into a tropical storm. There will be areas that will be damaged. And that's why a lot of the places on the water, you have to self-insure yourself, because a lot of insurance companies won't even touch these kind of properties. So when you live in a place like Orlando, and I've lived there for 20 years, the most severest experience that we had was, I think, in 2004. And the day after, we lost some electricity, and the day after, it was
back up.
So it's just like
on the
everything.
ground.
Like it makes the news, it's all the headlines, everyone's freaking out, but really it doesn't impact you on like a yearly
No, and I
basis,
mean,
really.
and it's not something you have to be necessarily concerned about year after year. And
In Orlando specifically.
correct.
yeah.
And then, then let's look at other experiences. You guys just had a hurricane or whatever, tornado.
We had a snowstorm.
No, Nova Scotia last week.
Oh, Nova
Nova
Scotia. I
Scotia. I was
apologize.
like, what happened
I thought you were
here?
about Toronto. I was like, yeah, okay.
But yeah,
right.
you're right, coastal, right?
Yep.
And tornadoes and Markham
Yep.
and whatever.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it happens everywhere in the world. I mean, we can't predict what's happening in nature, but what we can do is we can definitely get ahead of a trend and plan and strategize correctly and effectively when it comes to an investment.
Right.
By understanding the
insurance.
parameters, get insurance, get the right things to get your property rented on. And what are those things? For example, I would upgrade your kitchen. I would upgrade your floors. I would make sure that your house had all the bells and whistles, so that when you're starting your search, which is usually on a computer, you're simply looking at photographs. And when you look at these photographs, you either want to go for something that looks great. Not when you show up, you're going to end up with, substandard furniture that's falling apart, or the place looks better in the photographs, but it's a disaster when you get there. You want to try and add some unique items in the house. In some cases, it may be a really themed home. In other cases, it's a neutral home that is not themed as much, which my opinions on both topics, whether to theme or not to theme, that's the question.
That is the question.
That is the question. And my answer to that is it just depends on the circumstances. I think when you're looking for more consistent investment, keep the theme neutral. Because what happens is this. I'm going down to play golf with Jazz and the guys. There's 4 rooms, and there's 4 of us. Mm-hmm. I'm going for the first room that I'm jumping in. I picked my room. Poor Jazz over here ends up in the 4th bedroom, usually the princess bedroom. I'm not sleeping in that bedroom, right? So you want to try and tone down on the theming as such.
Making it somewhat neutral.
Yeah, somewhat
I guess.
neutral.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if you're going to do, a theme of let's just call it a sports theme
Yeah.
or a naval theme or something like that, would probably be better than a hardcore Harry
Disney
Potter.
theme.
Yeah, I guess in
Moana.
my mind, the only theme I would go for is like a Floridian theme. Like
Yeah.
that
Well, I mean,
people
the thing
come
is
in
you-
and it feels like you're in a tropical place.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of places that you will walk into, and one bedroom will be a Harry Potter bedroom, and then another bedroom will
Right,
be
they're
a
going off of the Disney
Elsa,
stuff. Yeah.
Elsa Frozen thing.
Yeah.
For the kids.
Sure.
So
I would love that as a kid.
I want to speak about what's actually like how the market is in Orlando right now. Because I know when we were speaking earlier part of 2022, it's very similar to what the Greater Toronto area is like, right? We have a supply and demand issue here. We have a lot of people coming into our country, and then specifically the Greater Toronto area, but we're kind of landlocked here, right? You can't build in certain areas with the Greenbelt legislation, and you can't also build fast enough, right? And so that's great for investors, not so much so for people who are trying to get into the real estate market. But for investors, it's fantastic. Values keep going up, and as well as even when rents, when mortgage rates are going up as they are, you also see rents increase because the tenant who was thinking about maybe buying their first property can no longer afford it because the rates just went up. What's the current state of the Orlando market right now?
So I love that you drew a parallel between the GTA market and the Orlando market. And ironically, just like you experienced, who would have thought during COVID, a pandemic, that housing prices would skyrocket and people would be lining up to do multiple offers in, a matter of hours, you can have your home sold. Hardly any inventory in the market under such uncertain times. Mm-hmm. And what has happened, just like you experienced here in Canada, circa, let's say, May 2022, interest rates started to go up and buyers started to panic. They got stuck in the mud. They started to question themselves and ask, is now a good time to invest or not? What a lot of people fail to realize is we have been spoiled since 2008. When you look at interest rate charts from the last 20 years or 30 years, we have experienced historically low interest rates, even at 6%. Because when you look at the charts prior to 2008, the rates were much higher than that. And I think in 1981, it was like 18% or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, now everyone's freaking out because as they crawl back up to 5-6%, it's like that seems so high compared to what it was. But really, that's not that bad.
I tell the story all the time. My first home was purchased in 2006. It was 4.5% on a 5-year fixed, 2006. And we left the bank, myself and my brothers, because we all had purchased homes, and we closed on homes together. And we were laughing. Like, holy crap, we just got 4.5%. How good is this, right? To your point, when people start getting used to the pretty much free money that was being given away. I mean, literally given to people, like obviously during the lockdown, but like with interest rates at 1.5%. I had people who were getting fixed rates at 1.7, 1.9% for like 3 to 5 years. Now when they go up to what we normally, like this is average. Like this is normal to see 4 to 5%. I mean, in the States are slightly higher though now, right? Like, what are we on a 30-year AM there, would you say?
So I think that's the one thing that a lot of your guests would find it surprising. You get a 30-year fixed rate with no prepayment penalty.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, you sell a property or you win the lottery, you can pay it off tomorrow.
Yeah.
Nobody's dinging you for paying it in advance. Right now, we're experiencing rates in the 6s.
Yeah.
And the reality of the situation is, Jerome Powell's major goal is to bring down the inflation rate to 2%. And they will raise the interest rate until that happens. We all know that this is not going to last forever. It is a way to stabilize our real estate market. And in many ways, I'll tell you, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
Because what's actually happening is the market is shifting. And it's shifting in favor of the buyer. What's actually happening on the market.
And they deserve it after all those years.
Yeah, they do. And what's actually happening right now is while buyers are getting stuck in the mud, deciding whether now is a good time to invest or not, there are other investors that I love working with that may be sitting on cash or are not afraid of the interest and now are able to take advantage of buying strategies that were not available to them a few months ago.
Yeah, and you just need to have the stomach for it.
Well,
right?
it's not only that. Jazz, you can negotiate the price now. Mm-hmm. Not only can you negotiate the price, you can ask the seller for closing cost concessions, which you couldn't do a few months ago. You can even use those concessions to buy down your rate. Why wouldn't you take advantage of doing that? And all of these strategies are available to you right now.
Well, one thing that's huge now compared to back in 2009, 2011 is the fact that you can actually leverage now.
Correct.
Meaning like we can actually get financing. So back then, I mean, I don't know when the shift happened. Maybe you can tell me, like, when did when was it a little bit easier now? When did that start for Canadians? Like 2018, 17?
Yeah, I would say that, TD was probably America's fastest growing bank. That's TD USA.
Yeah.
And RBC had a presence and then lost its footing in Florida and became more of a virtual bank. And you had other banks that really supported Canadian investors. Why? They have strong credit. Their credit system is identical to the US one. They can easily pull their credit scores, run background checks, all that kind of stuff. And there were more programs that are favorable to Canadian foreign nationals than any other foreign national out there.
Now, I mean, we can actually even work with independent mortgage brokers in the States to get a mortgage for a property. I mean, I've been screaming this from the rooftops since I learned it back 18 years ago. Try to work with an independent mortgage broker because he or she has access to so many lenders. Here in Canada, it's probably close to like 500 that they have access to, but they really only work with, I'm going to say 8 to 10 that they actually have good relationships with. We didn't have that ability to do that
in 2008, in 9, 10, 11.
So I had to use $100,000 cash, but maybe I didn't have the $100,000 cash, right?
And so what ended up happening was that shift actually happened right there. Somebody would come from Toronto with 150 or 200 grand, then all of a sudden they were buying a property outright cash.
Yeah.
And it was pure cash flow.
Yeah.
And then they're using the rest of the funds to go out and put a down payment on one, maybe two properties at the same time too.
Yeah, yeah.
And they could put as little as 20% down or 25%, depends on what it was. Whereas a lot of other foreign nationals were putting down 30 and 35 and 40 and even 50% down to be able to go and get the...
So we've checked off the fact that you can get the financing now as a Canadian. Taxation. I know you kind of glossed over it, but I want to spend a little bit of time there. What happens? I'm going to buy a property in Florida.
As an investment property.
As an investment property. Great point, Laura.
Let's call it a second home.
Let's call it a second home. Well, because I'm going to use it as well. Yeah. So it will be a second home. But I'm going to rent it out at times. And I'm going to see $1,000 a month cash flow. After all my expenses, my mortgage, my insurance, my you guys call them HOA fees there, home ownership association, I guess, right? Which is
maintenance fees,
condo fees, strata fees, that what we call them here in Canada. Repairs, maintenance, all that. I'm going to net $1,000 a month, and then the property in 5 years, call it just for giggles and round numbers, it goes up by about $100,000. Okay, let's just for giggles, okay? And I want to sell that property in 5 years. First, my $1,000 a month. What happens with that? If let's just say I decide to leave it in an American account, okay? And then when I sell this property in 5 years for $100,000 and I do want to bring that money back into Canada, how does all this tax stuff work?
So I'm going to start off by saying that we obviously have a team of experts that we work with.
Yep.
And all of our Canadian friends and clients go through the process and have their questions answered because everybody's different.
Yes.
But in general, what we can say is whatever income that you are receiving from your property, you will be paying income tax on it, which is fine. There's a lot of expenses that will help reduce that income expense. And of course, if you're going to visit and you're flying over there and if you're actually doing some work in the property, your tax advisor will be able to offset some of those expenses as well for you. But, it's not going to be something that you need to worry about. Why? Because you have all the professionals that are there by your side aiding you through the process.
So now I'm going to pay to like the IRS.
Correct.
And then when I bring it here, does the CRA hit me with that as well?
I believe in Canada you have to claim world income, and that I would suggest talking to
my accountant here. Okay, great.
Now, so let's just break it up into a couple of steps. You're paying property taxes.
Yep.
You're paying taxes on your income that you generate from the property, and then you're going to end up paying capital gains taxes, right? What's interesting for a Canadian is Canada and the US has a reciprocity between both countries. So when you purchase your property, we will be assisting you by getting an ITIN number, an individual tax identification number, kind of like a SIN number.
Yep.
And then what's going to happen is they're not going to be concerned with taxing you on the capital gain per se. Because you're foreign national, they're going to take 15%, which is the current rate that it's at right now, for FRIPTA. I don't really remember what FRIPTA stands for, Foreign Real Estate Interest Tax, something, whatever it is. Google it. Basically, they're going to take it on the sale price. So let's say, for example, you bought it at 100, you sold it at 200, you made 100 grand. They're going to withhold 15% of that.
Of the 100 grand.
Of the 200 grand.
200 grand. Okay, so $30,000.
Right? Now, there's ways in which you can minimize that exposure by getting a FRIPTA certificate and all this kind of stuff. It's a lot more detailed. From what you know,
Dawood, when you say they're going to hold it for $30,000, IRS is going to hold it.
And then what they're going to do is you're going to come back and file your taxes in Canada. And then based on whatever Revenue Canada says that you owe them, they're going to take it from that 30,000 and either give you money back or, you know.
So essentially, I'm not really getting double taxed then, from my understanding of it, which is fine. I understand I got to pay tax to somebody. I get that.
And you're a foreigner. So basically what they're trying to do is make sure you don't run away without paying your taxes.
Okay. So here's my strategy.
And if I don't have it all right, by the way, I have the experts.
I'm not quoting you on it. I get it. I understand. And the good thing is that you have the team and even here, you got to be dealing with your accountant. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the team's the team. For me, though, my strategy with the property that I got is to not necessarily bring any of that money back into Canada. What I'm planning to do, and tell me if I'm on the right path, is I'm going to refinance that property, pull out equity from that property so I can buy more properties in the States. That's kind of my bank, that home. I always say that you can use any piece of real estate. Let me rephrase this. What I like to say is invest into real estate where you can use the property as an ATM.
Correct.
Meaning, if there's not going to be an ability for me to refinance, pull out cash, and go buy other properties, for me, like my Jazz Takhar's portfolio, I'm probably not going to invest into that property. But here in the States, I can do this, right?
Yeah, and look at what's happening in the world right now. You know, stock market is tumbling. Crypto is, I don't know, market cap vanished by $1 trillion or whatever it is. Inflation is at a 40-year high. And what is the only asset class that has been able to hedge this inflation that we're going through? Real estate, of course. So if you're making money, if you're cash flowing, which is one thing that you could definitely do in Orlando that you can't do as much here, is get positive cash flow. Get that income stream that you have to go out and diversify, maybe bank it to go put a down payment somewhere else. You can hedge that against inflation. You can go out and build a portfolio of properties out there and really create something that you can pass on to your kids. And the beauty about it all is you're also doing all of that where your return is coming in US dollars. So you're, like I said, also making a lift on the cash flow that you're getting when you exchange the funds over.
Now, Laura, you talk about this with our clients a lot, right? The fact that you can have a cash flow investment, i.e. like a Florida, and then you can have an equity play, more like a pre-construction condo that, I mean, you have
in any major city,
200 of our clients a year with that. What is it about like the pre-con in Toronto that always made you kind of bullish on it?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I like to invest where I live. So like, particularly as a new investor, when I'm not that comfortable. So I live in Toronto, so it makes sense for me, again, talking about being a landlord and having to fix things or deal with problems. Like I can just drive there in 20 minutes. It's no big deal. And for me, Toronto is where a lot of the jobs are. And we're bringing in 500,000 people into Canada every single year, promised by the government. And about 300,000 of those people are coming to the greater Toronto area. So for me, I already know that we have a housing crisis. To me, that's only going to get worse. And so the cash flow is not that important to me right now, where I'm at in my life cycle. That might change in the future, but for right now, I actually think it's great not having the cash flow. I'd have to pay tax on it anyway. So for me, it's just like, let's just invest where I know there's going to be continuous demand for the product.
And you also have the fact that, like, even when you say cash flow, like, I mean, even the properties that you've invested into, your rental income is going to cover all your expenses. You're just going to have neutral cash flow, right?
Yeah.
Once you take into consideration all the expenses.
I want to bring us to something because I've been sitting listening to this tax conversation, and as riveting as it is, I want to talk about
Tell me how you really feel.
I want to talk about the pests because when we were doing some pro formas, working on our Azure property specifically, and me just having lived in Florida for 8 months when I kind of add it all together.
I can't wait to hear where
We
you're going to go with
had
this.
now this was an oceanfront property.
We never know where the
this
fuck
was an
Alfonso's going with our
oceanfront property. I'm
conversations.
not trying to scare people here, but oceanfront property. Woke up to, I called it a tarantula, but it was not a tarantula in my bed. But for the people who are watching, probably with the legs included, this big. A
Were you
gecko
sleeping
on the
outside?
wall.
Were you sleeping
No,
outside?
no, just got through. Gecko on the wall, which was really adorable, actually.
Sounds more like
And-
India than it does Florida.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Like,
think
we
what
gotta-
other types.
You know, you can wear those
animals.
geckos as earrings, right?
They're so cute. They're like these little animals. Like, what's the pest situation like in Orlando? Because I feel like you have to factor that in a little bit more.
We
than
did.
perhaps we did.
And we
I
did
know,
into
yeah.
our performance, as you mentioned.
But the funny thing is,
Are there alligators coming into the properties here? Like, what's going on?
I got a pet alligator named Elvis that comes and
And
hangs
should
out in
I
my
turn
pool
that
all the
into
time.
some nice purses? Or?
Or shoes, for that matter. No, actually, I have never seen an alligator outside of a body of water. They don't walk around like lost raccoons or anything like that.
The raccoon
That's a shot at Trump.
situation,
He gave us- he gave Trump
Actually, it's funny that by the way, it's funny that you say that because I came into town and went to go visit my sisters, literally got out of the car, and right beside where they put all the plants in front of Loblaws was the largest raccoon I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, we make them big here. We feed them well.
Oh my God, it was insane. It was like a baby bear or something.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, look, yes, they have little dinosaurs running around, which are little lizards. They get bigger as you get down south because people have, let loose their iguanas and stuff like that. So you see them running around, but not in the Florida area. I mean, yeah.
You got to work that into your performance, like Laura mentioned.
But
yeah.
I don't think it's a concern of what you're thinking about. The kind of pest control that we're talking about is, obviously spraying for
Well, and that's
insects
just it.
and
And
stuff
that was
like
really
that.
my point.
Yeah.
Like,
Bed
I
bugs
had
and
lived
stuff.
there,
Not
and
bed
that was
bugs, but
not
just
a,
like out on the perimeter of the property. So insects and just
like
keep all the
palmetto
critters out
bugs
of
and
the
stuff like
Got
that.
it.
I think
Yeah.
there was an issue with those too. But like
Isn't
you
that a
said,
nice way to call a cockroach?
I
Palmetto
know,
bug?
but it wasn't a cockroach. It's different.
Yeah,
but
they
they look
fly.
like cockroaches, and they were anyway. Horror story. But you know what? We lived there, and we lived there for months. And you get someone to come in, they spray, they deal with the
Yep.
problem. It's really no different than anywhere.
Than
So
any
I
kind of
wasn't saying it
maintenance.
as to rip on it.
No, no, no.
It's more of if people are concerned about those types of things, it's only because they don't know. And you don't know what you don't know.
There's areas
So,
in
yeah,
East
it's not-
York that
And-
you
and-
need to,
and you know what?
You're not going to buy a
You're
house
gonna
in...
have worse cockroach problems.
Well, you're going to have termite problems there.
Yeah.
You got to make sure, right, that you know what you're doing and doing those kind of inspections as well.
And you're right about that. With construction, you do want to be concerned about termites and stuff like that. So you just put your termite traps in the ground. And
Quick segue before we finish.
Why do we have to finish? I'm having so much fun.
Well,
I'm
buddy,
starving.
I can go on forever. I know.
I know you guys fast,
she's
but I'm
gonna
like
get
sitting here like
she's gonna get hangry, and so
almost
that
won.
she's gonna start throwing the mics and stuff. And I'm afraid for Wei and Yas. In terms of, I asked Laura the question about new builds. What is the situation in Orlando when it comes to like new build stuff? Is it majority resale stuff on the market, or is like I know we did the project that was new build,
Yeah.
but is there a lot of that? Was that like kind of a one-off?
So let's just talk about the market right now. And
Yeah.
I want to talk to you, the investor. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to look.
I don't know
I'll
which
go-
one you- this
that
one
guy.
here. There
I'm
you
picking you. Okay. Hello, investor. Listen carefully. Okay, so the market is shifting. And what I want to share with you is this. You as a buyer have the opportunity to take advantage of the following things. A few months ago, if you wanted to go out and buy a new build, there wasn't inventory in the market. So you sat on a long wait list that maybe was 100 to 400 people deep. Today, those wait lists are basically down to a couple of people, and or there could be some inventory homes that you can take advantage of that you could put a contract on and have a home completed within, let's say, 3 months to 8 months. On the other hand, if you wanted to go out and buy a resale, there are some advantages to buying a resale home. Number one, it's there. You can close on it in 30 days. It's cash flowing from day one. 9 out of 10 times, a lot of the sellers are selling those properties with the furniture in place, so you don't have to go out and purchase other furniture items. The cons, on the other hand, is sometimes the communities tend to be a little bit older, or the furniture may be dated, or the finishes dated. So there are pros and cons to going with a new build, and there are pros and cons to going with a resale. In both cases, today you can take advantage of incentives that developers are offering, and you can work with your agent that can work with the listing agents in order to be able to go out and get you that sweet deal that you're looking on, because sellers are now beginning to become more realistic in our market. You can work on the price, you can work on other factors that can assist you, whether it's getting closing costs or a portion of them paid by a seller, and or even getting the seller in some cases to help you buy down the rate. You won't be able to do that on a new build, but you do have flexibility in the market that we're in.
Well, I love the fact that you went on your little soliloquy there, and in terms of mentioning the pros and the cons, because we say this all the time, that if someone tells you that there's no disadvantages to some type of investment, you need to run away, because they're full of shit. Because there's always things that you need to consider, and then you got to see what you have a stomach for. Does it make sense for you? Are you thinking about it from a long-term perspective? What if rates even go up a little bit higher? Can you manage that? Are you someone that has shown that you can save money and you can cut away at expenses? Like for me, I mean, I got some properties as the rates went up right now that are not positive cash flow, but I'm not going to fucking freak out and sell my properties because they're like, I got to put in $300 a month. Well, that just means less lunch. Like I'm not going to eat less tequila with Dawood. You know what I mean? And as we joke about it, I'm really serious about it, right? Like I go down my list of things that I need to cut way before I'm thinking about getting rid of my properties. Because if I'm putting in $300 a month into a property, I don't even care if I'm doing it for 2 years, because I know over 2 years it's only a little over $7,000. But I know that the property's appreciating bare minimum at 5% a year. Let's cut that in half and go 2.5% on my $700,000 properties. I'm increasing my portfolio by $15,000, $16,000 every single year, right? So I love the fact that you went through all the pros and all the cons. I could do this with you. Like we talk all the time. We could go on and on and on. As I mentioned, I know Elto's getting hangry. I can tell she's like, I'm freaking out. I need to eat.
And before you wrap up, can I just say, Dawood, like I think our Jazz Takhar podcast takeover was great. Yeah, so give me another one of these. So that
you didn't get it. You didn't get it. Hey, we caught that on. We caught that on camera. He left you hanging.
But we need to change the name over here.
There's some work that we need to do, but I think we crushed it.
I think we did a great job.
Elto, thank you so much for everything. Dawood, thank you for flying in, making sure that you came and visited us. We turned this into an impromptu podcast that I think my viewers, my listeners are going to love, and they're going to share it with their friends, because there's just so many people wondering how the heck they can invest and where to invest and what type of all the stuff that you covered.
But, you know, I think with the success that we've had together and the ability to be able to kind of keep rolling this out, I think our partnership has really proved that in the most uncertain times that we were able to provide a winning solution for investors. I can only imagine what the future holds with more projects that we can bring to your listeners and to your investors as well. Well, looking forward to it.
Let's go have a tequila.
Let's do it.
And we're going to wrap up this podcast. Thanks again for everybody who was watching and listening. Make sure that if you're listening in your car, taking your dog for a walk, on the treadmill, and you have not yet downloaded my app, yes, your boy came out with his own app in the App Store, in the Play Store. You just search my name, first name Jazz, last name Takhar, and you'll find my brand new app. It's the only place that you can actually see this video, and moving forward, you're going to see exclusive content, which is my keynotes, as well as featured ons, meaning when I was a guest on other people's podcasts. I look forward to getting your feedback, and to you two crazies, you guys did an okay job today.
One more
Thank you.
Thank you.